Well, here in the US, we're heading into the fall season, which means winter is right around the corner. I'm not a big fan of the cold, and certainly not the sunless gray skies for weeks on end. But as we're preparing for the frigid months, it does remind me of the snow, the ice, and the frost where a Frost Mage would feel right at home. Hey everyone, Two Angry Frogs here with our latest class guide, and this time we're walking through the Frost Mage Frostfire Hero spec. We'll get you up to speed on the talents, rotations, and other important things to know for this spec. And stick around until the end for a new addition to our class guides, where we provide the Two Angry Frogs ranking for Frostfire Frost Mage. When you see a hero spec named Frostfire, you might expect a mix of frost and fire spells in the rotation. With this iteration, not so much. Even though we do have some active fire spells in our talent choices, in terms of playstyle, fire spells and damage are passive, bringing little change from Dragonflight. The rotation is still 100% frost and very familiar. So how does Frostfire work? It starts with Frostfire Bolt, a new spell that replaces Frost Bolt and generates two new stacking buffs, Frost Mastery and Fire Mastery. With the Frostfire Mastery talent, Frost Mastery increases our Mastery stat, and Fire Mastery increases our Haste stat. Both of these can stack up to a maximum of 6 times, and then their hero talents Excess Frost and Excess Fire kick in. With Excess Frost, when we hit 6 stacks, our next Flurry cast also casts an Ice Nova and reduces the cooldown of Comet Storm. With Excess Fire, when we hit 6 stacks, our next Ice Lance plants a living bomb on the target. And then with the hero talent Frostfire Infusion, all of our frost and fire spells have a chance to fire an additional Frostfire Bolt, which in turn generates more Frostfire Mastery. Our capstone hero talents Frostfire Empowerment and Flash Freeze Burn work together to increase Frostfire Bolt damage and quickly max out our Frost and Fire Mastery. Frostfire Empowerment gives our Frost and Fire spells a chance to make Frostfire Bolt instant cast, deal increased damage, and explode hitting nearby enemies. Flash Freeze Burn causes our Frostfire Empowerment to max out our masteries and reset the duration of both. We have 3 choice nodes in the Frostfire hero talent tree. The first is a defensive option between Imbued Warding and Meltdown. And between these two, Imbued Warding will typically provide the most utility. The second choice node includes Elemental Affinity and Flame and Frost. Neither of these really brings anything major since our rotation is completely frost abilities. The final choice is between Severe Temperatures and Thermal Conditioning. This selection depends on whether we are playing with Death's Chill or not. If we're playing with Death's Chill, we take Thermal Conditioning, and if not, we take Severe Temperatures. And we'll show this later in the video. For Frost Mage, the 2 most important things to understand to maximize your gameplay and your damage are the concepts of freezing enemies and shattering spells, also known as the Shatter combo. So how do we freeze an enemy? In single target, we primarily freeze enemies with the spell Flurry and passively freeze through Fingers of Frost. In AoE, we can also freeze multiple enemies with Frost Nova, Ice Nova, and Cone of Cold. We will see all of these spells play out in the single target and AoE rotations. Once enemies are frozen, then we look to shatter spells against those enemies, and this is where the Shatter talent comes in. This greatly increases the critical strike chance against frozen targets. And then we have multiple talents that increase the damage of specific spells against frozen targets. So what spells do we shatter? In single target, we are looking to shatter our big damage spells like Glacial Spike and Comet Storm, and in AoE, we primarily shatter Comet Storm. And in both cases, we will shatter our Ice Lances. So let's look at an example of how this is specifically played. When you cast Flurry, it applies stacks of a debuff to the enemy called Winter's Chill, and this lasts for 6 seconds. When Winter's Chill is applied, the enemy becomes frozen. So the basic idea is to cast a Flurry and then use the Winter's Chill debuff to shatter and increase the damage of our Glacial Spike, Comet Storm, and Ice Lances. When we cast Glacial Spike and Ice Lance, it uses one of the Winter's Chill stacks, so depending on the spells available in our rotation, we could end up casting different shatter combos. For example, cast Frostbolt into a Flurry, into an Ice Lance, into an Ice Lance, shatters Frostbolt and 2 Ice Lances. If we cast Glacial Spike into a flurry into an Ice Lance, that will shatter the Glacial Spike and an Ice Lance. And then another example is if we cast a flurry into a Glacial Spike, into a Comet Storm, into an Ice Lance, we shatter the Glacial Spike, Comet Storm, and Ice Lance. You'll notice in the above examples that flurry might be cast before or after a spell to shatter it. This works due to spell queuing and travel time. So when you cast a Frostbolt or a Glacial Spike immediately followed by a flurry, the first flurry bolt will hit the target before the Frostbolt or Glacial Spike reaches and hits the target. So a stack of Winter's Chill is applied before Frostbolt or Glacial Spike hits, resulting in the spell being shattered, and we'll see this in the single target rotation coming up. Another way to shatter is specific to Ice Lance with the Fingers of Frost talent. When we get Fingers of Frost, Ice Lance hits the target as if it were frozen, and in this case the Ice Lance damage is tripled with additional damage increases from other talents as well. So we are getting a ton of damage from Ice Lances when we cast with the Fingers of Frost proc and we shatter the spell. The majority of our rotational abilities for single target are taken in our Frost talent tree. There are 6 in total, which include Ice Lance, which shoots a shard of ice at the target, and damage is tripled against frozen targets. Frozen Orb, which launches an orb of swirling wind, dealing damage to all enemies it passes through, and grants procs of Fingers of Frost to empower our Ice Lances. Flurry hits the target 3 times, each bolt applying a stack of Winter's Chill, freezing the target. Comet Storm calls down icy comets and damages all enemies in the area. Glacial Spike merges all of our current icicles into a spike that impales the target. This does require 5 icicles to cast. And Icy Veins, which is our big 2-minute cooldown, increases haste and summons a water elemental, increasing our frost damage. Our single target rotation centers around Fingers of Frost and Shatter combos to take advantage of the high damage on frozen targets. We'll use our Fingers of Frost and Brain Freeze procs, which resets Flurry, along with an occasional Frostfire Bolt to generate Shatter combos with Glacial Spike as often as possible. So for our opener, we'll cast Frostfire Bolt immediately followed by a Flurry, and we'll cast Ice Lance to shatter it. Cast Icy Veins, cast Comet Storm to shatter it since the target is still frozen from Winter's Chill, cast Frozen Orb, cast 2 Ice Lances, cast Flurry, and at this point we have 5 icicles for Glacial Spike, so cast Glacial Spike to shatter it and use the first charge of Winter's Chill, and then we'll cast an Ice Lance to use the second charge. As we go into the rotation, we want to make sure that we are not losing any Winter's Chill charges and that we are shattering our Glacial Spikes and Comet Storms. During Icy Veins, you may find that Fingers of Frost and Brain Freeze are proccing so often that you can't keep up with the Ice Lances and Flurries, so the following provides a priority list to look for during the rotation. We'll cast Comet Storm if it's off cooldown and Winter's Chill is on the target. If you have 4 icicles and Flurry is available, cast Flurry followed by Glacial Spike to shatter it. If you are already at 5 icicles and Flurry is available, cast Glacial Spike immediately followed by Flurry to shatter Glacial Spike. Additionally, if you have 5 icicles, cast Glacial Spike even if Flurry is not available, since it is a very high damage spell. Cast Ice Lance to use Winter's Chill charges that have not already been used. Cast Ice Lance if you have Fingers of Frost, and then cast Frostfire Bolt when you cannot cast anything else. For our major cooldowns during the rotation, we'll cast Icy Veins when it's available. We'll cast Frozen Orb when it's available. For Shifting Power, we'll cast it if Icy Veins is on cooldown, and Comet Storm and Frozen Orb have at least another 10 seconds before they are available. For AoE, we pick up talents to enhance Frozen Orb and Blizzard, our 2 primary AoE abilities. With Ice Collar, each time Blizzard does damage, it reduces the cooldown of Frozen Orb, and then with Freezing Rain, when we cast Frozen Orb, our next Blizzard is instant cast and has increased damage. We grab Freezing Winds, which gives us Fingers of Frost every 3 seconds while Frozen Orb is active. And finally, with Coldest Snap, we use Cone of Cold to reset Frozen Orb and Comet Storm when hitting 3 or more enemies. We'll drop a few of our more single target oriented talents, including Chain Reaction, Slick Ice, and Cold Front. With our AoE rotation, we're looking to ramp up damage with Death's Chill and then cast as many Frozen Orbs, Blizzards, and Comet Storms as possible. We'll want to shatter Comet Storm whenever possible for the increased damage to frozen enemies. So we'll open with Icy Veins, cast Frozen Orb, which gives us an instant cast of Blizzard, so cast Blizzard, cast Frostfire Bolt until we have 15 stacks of Death's Chill. This stacks only when Icy Veins is active and increases all of our spell damage by 1% for each stack. If we're playing the build with no Death's Chill, then we skip this step. Cast Comet Storm, cast Cone of Cold to reset the cooldown of Comet Storm and Frozen Orb, cast another Comet Storm to shatter it, cast Frozen Orb for another instant cast of Blizzard, cast Blizzard, and then cast Shifting Power to start the cooldown reductions. For our rotation, most of our damage is tied up in Comet Storm, Frozen Orb, and Blizzard. In between cooldowns, we can cast and shatter single target spells such as Frostbolt and Glacial Spike. Cast Frozen Orb when available for an instant cast of Blizzard and to generate Fingers of Frost procs. Cast Blizzard. If you have just cast Comet Storm and Cone of Cold is available, cast a Cone of Cold to reset the cooldowns for Comet Storm and Frozen Orb. You must hit at least 3 targets and be in very close range when casting Cone of Cold. If you have just cast Icy Veins, cast Frostfire Bolt to build up the stacks of Death's Chill. If you're playing with a build with no Death's Chill, then you can skip this step. Then we'll look to cast Comet Storm. In addition to Cone of Cold, you can shatter Comet Storm in AoE by casting a Frost Nova or an Ice Nova on enemy groups. When we switch over to single target, when all of our AoE is on cooldown, we'll cast Glacial Spike, cast Flurry to shatter the Glacial Spike, cast Ice Lance if you have Fingers of Frost, and then cast Fire Frost Bolt when you have nothing else to cast. For our major cooldowns during the rotation, cast Icy Veins when available, and cast Shifting Power when available. For Frost Mage, all secondary stats are important and we want to maintain a good balance between all of them. However, we can use the following as a general guideline. In terms of percentages, Critical Strike at just above 33% will lead to all spells that can be shattered being critical strikes. This is not required, however. With even just 28% Critical Strike, the Shatter talent gives us 92% Critical Strike chance for spells that can shatter, so you don't want to exclusively stack Critical Strike. Mastery will increase our Icicles, Frozen Orb, Blizzard, Glacial Spike, and Comet Storm damage, and a decent amount of haste is always good as it reduces the global cooldown for faster spell casting, which really benefits Fire Frost Bolt and Glacial Spike. For Season 1 Frost Mage, we have the Violet Rebirth tier set. How does the Season 1 tier set fit into Frostfire Frost Mage play? For Frostfire, it has little impact on single target, but does give a reasonable damage boost to our AoE. For 2 pieces of tier set, our Ice Lance damage is increased by 8%, and for 4 pieces of tier set, our Ice Lance is cast with Fingers of Frost, trigger Frigid Pulse. Ice Lances explode and deal damage to nearby enemies. Tier set pieces drop from raid bosses at all levels from LFR to Mythic, and can also show up as random selections in your Great Vault. You can also convert non-tier gear to tier set gear using the Matrix Catalyst and Dornagal. For the visuals and playstyle, we give Frostfire 3 out of 5. Visually, it is a pretty cool hero spec, especially in AoE. The amount of frost, ice, and snow falling from the sky is tremendous, and throwing in the occasional meteor makes you feel like you are absolutely pelting enemies. Unfortunately, outside of an occasional instant Frostfire Bolt, the rotation for prior iterations of Frost Mage lacks the feeling of something new. The hero talents do integrate really well into Frost Mage, but mixing in some fire spell usage would have made the spec feel more like Frost and Fire combined. For ease of play, we give Frostfire 3 out of 5. Once you get used to the Shatter combo and the different variations that can occur, Frost Mage does become easier to play. However, it can take some time to get used to it. Mobility, like with other ranged caster specs, can be a constant source of spellcast interruption until you learn the mechanics of boss enemies and learn how to integrate icy flows into your rotation. But we do have Icy Veins as an instant cast even when Fingers of Frost is not up. For single target, we give Frostfire Mage Hero Spec a 1 out of 5. It deals significantly less damage than the Spellslinger Hero Spec and is well below most other classes and specs for single target DPS. If you're running LFR in normal raid, this should not have any major impact, but it's not in a great position when it comes to raiding at any high level. For AoE, we rank Frostfire Mage with a 2 out of 5. Frostfire sits pretty much right in the middle of the DPS pack. It is comparable to Spellslinger as far as AoE, but lags behind Spellslinger in priority target damage when it comes to Mythic Plus bosses. Although this is not as significant until you hit higher level keys with tyrannical bosses. So should you play it? If the majority of the content you play is open world, LFR, and normal raiding, or lower level dungeons, then we will always recommend playing what you like and what you find fun. For heroic and mythic raiding, especially for DPS check bosses and high level Mythic Plus, Frostfire significantly lags behind other ranged DPS specs, and for single target, it lags behind Spellslinger, so you may have difficulty in keeping up with other specs and higher level content. So that is Frostfire. Well, mainly Frost with some passive fire. It is a fun hero spec to play, and though it lags behind in ranged DPS, for open world content and alt characters, it can be a great hero spec choice. We really do hope this video helps you better understand how Frostfire works and why we take the talents we do, and then how all of this feeds into a rotation that makes sense. As always, let us know your thoughts and any questions you have down below in the comments, and make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you always know what's coming up next. And everyone, have a great day in the frozen tundra.